Hello everyone, this is Michael Bean from Foreo, and we're going to start the webinar Creating and Publishing Interactive Online Analytics Applications. That is a mouthful. And the webinar today is going to run about an hour, and we'll just jump right into it. What I want to do first, though, is just make sure that you have a good experience as you're running through the webinar today. And if you look at this control panel for GoToWebinar, what you should see on the right is a little symbol that looks kind of like a table or something, that little round circle there that's kind of in the middle of the screen. If you click on that, it'll go into full screen mode, and that'll make it easier to see the slides as we go through things today. Also, at the end, we're going to have time for a few questions, maybe only one or two, we'll see. And my colleague Amber Christensen, who's here with me today, will be reading those questions, and when we reach the end, she's going to ask me a few of those questions, and I'll respond over the audio here. And at one point during the webinar, too, we're going to have a short poll just asking some questions about your experience with HTML and JavaScript and CSS, so that'll come up kind of midway through the talk today. So let's get started. I think it's always good to start off and explain a little bit about why do all this stuff. What is the purpose of sharing models online? And the premise of Foreo Epicenter, and really the mission of Foreo, is to deal with this problem, which is that there are thousands of valuable models and analyses that are trapped on the desktop. You know, I know many people. I go to many conferences, and I have many friends who work in analytics and in system dynamics and other kinds of sort of machine learning technologies and things. And often people work for months or even years on a problem and really have great insights into solving something. But because those models are in tools that are really designed to be used by modelers and not by, say, experts in other areas, say clinicians or people that just may be interested in understanding a problem better, other people can't learn from it, and there's sort of a limited ability for people to interact with those models. So if you're able to get models online and share them with your colleagues, share them with clients, just other people out in the world, then it's sort of a force multiplier for that model. You're going to be able to reach maybe 10, 100, maybe even 100,000 more times the number of people that could have experienced if you just shared it through the desktop application that you're using. So today what we're going to do is talk about Foreo Epicenter. And Epicenter is a platform. It's really the third generation of Foreo's platform. We started with a platform back in 2002 called Foreo Broadcast, and that migrated to Foreo Simulate in 2007, and just this past summer, in the summer of 2014, we released Foreo Epicenter, and it has a lot of new features to it, some of which we'll be exploring today. But it's a computational platform for hosting server-side models, and then creating interactive interfaces to those models, and then making it possible to share insights on web and mobile. So you can use this to create web interfaces to models that can, and obviously some web interfaces can work on mobile devices too, but in addition, if you want to, you can use it to create applications that are, say, iPhone apps, for example, or iPad tablet-based applications and things like that as well, and also for Android, of course. Okay, so Foreo Epicenter can share simulations. It also can share statistical analyses, machine learning problems, and optimizations, other kinds of analytical models online. So one of the changes from Epicenter to Epicenter from our earlier versions of the platform is that we host a much wider variety of languages than we have historically, and we're expanding that list. We're going to be adding additional languages in the coming years, months and years, really. But popular languages that we support right now are things like R and Python. We also support Julia, which is sort of an up-and-coming technical computing language. We support Vensim for system dynamics, and hope to support other system dynamics languages in the future. We also support Lua. Lua is sort of an interesting choice because there's some deep learning or artificial intelligence packages that are connected to Lua called Torch, and so that's why we have that on there. We also support Java. We have our own language that we call SimLang that makes it easy to build turn-based simulations, and we have some support for Excel as well. So what I'd like to do today is kind of illustrate a type of simulation or a type of model and other kinds of analytic applications that can be built using Epicenter, and I want to focus on high production value tools. And I'm going to get into talking about that a little bit later. But what I'm trying to do right now is talk about things that are fairly polished, that are designed and have been implemented within JavaScript, so there's some flexibility with that. And I want to go through 4 examples kind of initially to show you types of things that can be created using Foreo Epicenter. And then what we're going to do is get into actually working on these and kind of building out some examples that, while probably not quite as polished as these, are still some nice examples of things that can be done with Epicenter fairly quickly. So let's start with that. All right, so this is an investment portfolio simulation. It's done in as a Monte Carlo-based tool, and it's done. We did this with a faculty at Stanford who has a very good book. It's called The Flaw of Averages, named Sam Savage, and he's worked with on investment portfolio theory. And this is a tool where what we're doing is running 1,000 Monte Carlo runs for over 5 years to look at payout on a portfolio. And on the top here, what you can see is that we have U.S. stocks, emerging markets, global bonds, global real estate, and cash equivalent. And this is kind of set up as a game, in that your idea here is to adjust your portfolio to achieve an average return of at least $120 while minimizing your chances of losing $5, right? So here we've achieved one of those objectives. In a sense, we have a relatively low chance of loss, but our average value for a portfolio over 5 years is only $109, so we want to get that up to $120. And the way to do that in this particular tool is to kind of adjust your portfolio. And you can see kind of why we're doing so well in terms of chance of loss, but so poorly in terms of our return. It's because we have nearly everything in cash in here right now. So what I'm going to do is adjust that. I'm going to put more into emerging markets and more into global bonds, and maybe drop my percentage in cash. And then what you can see here is, well, I've achieved my objective, but I have kind of a high chance of loss, or a higher chance of loss than I might be capable of achieving. So if I scale that back, you can see here, I'm just moving this around, the slider down here at the bottom, and I can rerun those 1,000 runs over 5 years and get a better return. I think there's some way to get me down to 4%. I'm not doing it right now. There it is. Okay, I found it. Good. So you can see how that works. And what's happening behind the scenes here is there's a model that is running. I believe this model was built in R, and it's communicating with the web interface, and then it's reporting 1,000 runs back and creating this graph that you see here in the middle of the page. And that's all happening as I'm kind of slide this thing back and forth. This is also built in a way where it's using communication mechanisms, so we can store results. One of the nice things about having things online is that you can store results from any runs that users do and use them for various things. One thing you could use them for that's implemented here is kind of a high score list. So I put in a name here on the bottom and listed out what I can see. Oh, I did actually really well here. Okay, so there's my name on the bottom here, and you can see other people. I ran this earlier today, kind of testing this out in advance of running the tool, and you can see results for the last 10 players who played it. So it's just a way of creating a leaderboard or a high score list. Moving on to another example, this tool was built with Julia, and it's using a solver. We've actually run different solvers underneath it. We've tried Garobi and Cplex. Right now it's running GLPK as the solver, which is an open source solver. And it's doing some interesting things. So this is what we're looking at here is a traveling salesman problem. And traveling salesman problem is a kind of a classic optimization problem where you try to find the best route across multiple points for you're traveling around the city. And you can kind of imagine this one as a delivery service, say Google Shopping Express or Amazon Fresh or something like that, where they're supposed to deliver a bunch of products around various locations in the city. And if I click calculate best route, what it's going to do is find a better route than my initial sort of arbitrary set of points around the city here. And what you can see here on the bottom is sort of the outcome of that, where distance traveled has been reduced by 35%. The longest segment has been cut by 47%, and travel time has been reduced from over 2 hours to about an hour and a half, something like that. What I think is interesting about this, too, is that it's using a bunch of web technologies to make it much more interactive. So there's really 3 different pieces of web technology that's being used here. One of them is when we built this, we wanted to have sort of an arbitrary list of businesses appear, and the city of San Francisco provides an API that lists out all the businesses and their addresses in San Francisco. So this list is recreated each time, and it just pulls that API that's provided by the city to create the list of businesses here. We're also, the traditional traveling salesman problem is solved using distance. However, in this one, we're not solving by distance. What we're actually using is duration. So right now in San Francisco, it's 10 o'clock in the morning or 10 a.m. You can see up here on my computer. And what we're actually doing is solving for this route, this best route among these businesses for 10 a.m. using duration. And we're using a traffic API to determine what the duration is among all these different points. And lastly, of course, we're using Google Maps. So we're using Google Maps to display these waypoints and show the map overall. And what we're allowing people to do, as we kind of did in the previous example, is to let people kind of experiment and interact with a tool, in this case, interact with an optimization and enter in their own information here. So if I wanted to, I could put in, for example, I don't know, let's see, Pier 39, a popular visitor's place in San Francisco. I could put in, let's see, the Exploratorium. I see that there on the map, so that'll be easy for me to find. I can put on Golden Gate Bridge. I think that's the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, there it is. I can put on the park, let's say Golden Gate Park in here. And that'll be enough for now. And if I then calculate the best route on that, I get that route. So what you can see with it is I'm able to kind of explore with alternatives as well. And this is built on a stack of technologies, as I mentioned. It's including Foreo Epicenter, and we're using this library for graphs called Foreo Contour, which I'll explain later. Google Maps, of course, and then Julia, and these libraries for connecting to optimization solvers called JUMP, which is an algebraic tool for making it easy to connect to various solvers. Okay, another example here. This is done with Python and Scikit for doing a machine learning tool. And what we're doing with it is things like, well, how can I find new restaurants based on restaurants that I already like? So the idea here is it's using some collective intelligence, essentially, to discover restaurants in a city, in this case, Phoenix, Arizona, restaurants that I might like in that city. So I'm going to click on a restaurant here. And what you can see is it's loading Kitchen 57. And what it's doing is it's loading in restaurants that other reviewers who reviewed Kitchen 56 liked in Phoenix. And you can see that people who like Kitchen 56 also like Pizzeria Bianco and Fez and Beckett's Table. And you can see some Yelp reviews over here and another map, I guess a Google map over here, as well as a picture that came from Yelp that's appearing here. And what I can do is say, well, that's interesting. Maybe I would like to try Fez. So I'll go to Fez here and check on that. And now it's saying, well, okay, if you think you like Kitchen 56 and Fez, then here's some other ones that you might like as well. And it's showing me the match of Fez to Kitchen 56. So it's, again, using some machine learning algorithms, this case using Python with Scikit to generate those. And we're able to connect in some of these pieces here with social media. So I can see my list of things as I kind of click through it. I'll click on this one too to kind of extend it. And I'm kind of building this list of places that I might be interested in exploring later. I can send that to Facebook if I want to list it or tweet it, or I can send it to my email as a way of kind of referencing it later, and then I'll connect through back to looking at the Yelp review. And again, this is an example where we're connecting in different pieces of the web to create an interesting application and using analytics to help solve some interesting problems. Another sort of example of how we can use an analytics engine to help to work with people kind of globally is this is an example of a sim that was built in system dynamics in a tool called VenSim, and for helping clinicians in Haiphong. So there's a group called Management Sciences for Health that works with USAID. USAID is a U.S. federal funding agency that provides resources for helping developing countries deal with various kinds of crises, and also that's what Management Sciences for Health does. There's an expert modeler who built a very nice Vensim model to look at solving this, or looking at how to allocate resources for helping to reduce the incidences of HIV and AIDS. You know, the challenge with sharing a model like that with people who are in the field and working on that problem is that, again, they might not be familiar, in this case, with this Vensim interface, but they also might not even speak the same language as the modeler, which was the case in this, you know, for this one. So what we're able to do here is, you know, look at different regions of, in this case, Vietnam, and then also choose what language we want the simulation to appear in. So here we're going to be able to run this one in English for me today. And you can see some results for what's going on in Haiphong right now. And I can start the simulation, and I can start to experiment with policies where I can, you know, maybe say, well, what would happen if I invested more in prevention? And I'm not doing a careful job of this, obviously, for our demo today. And by the way, all of these are available publicly, too, if you want to try any of these after our webinar today. And I'll call this my prevention scenario. And now I have a new scenario that I'm listing, and I can see how it compares, and I can sort of compare runs here over time and get data out of it. I can copy the data to the clipboard and then pull that out and use it, say, in Excel or something like that. And if I have an account on this thing, I'm able to save these runs and compare them and even share them with my colleagues and things like that. So those are four examples of the kinds of things that can be done with Epicenter. And again, these are sort of examples, I'd say, of more polished, what we refer to as high production value tools. What I want to do next is kind of talk about how these things get built and show you some examples specifically of how we approach this. And there's really two cases I want to kind of talk about here. One is of the lone modeler or the lone data scientist working on a problem and kind of solving things. And you know, when a lone modeler or lone data scientist is working, the tool set that they're familiar with is often the modeling tool they're using, be it, you know, Julia or R or Python or Vensim or something like that. So we have a tool that makes it relatively easy to create interfaces using a drag and drop. It's called the UI Builder, and it produces, you know, reasonably good interfaces, but not quite as high quality as these high production value tools. So let me log in to Epicenter and kind of show that to you, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to log into my own account right now. Oops. Interesting. And my keyboard just stopped working. Let's see what I can do about that. Having a little technical difficulty with my keyboard. Let's see. Let me try something here. Well, it's going to be hard to do my webinar if I can't type. So let's see what I can do. Let's see if I can figure this out. Oh, that works now. Okay, let's see if it's come back to me. All right, well, let's try something else. I'll try logging in on another, maybe it's something with, okay, good, that worked. All right, we're back in business here. Excellent. So I'm going to Forio Epicenter, and I'm already logged in. I'm just going to go ahead and keep that here. And what I want to do is show you an example of this is an example of a project management model that was built with Vensim and R. And let me just show you what the final interface on this looks like. This is, again, a little bit simpler. What it's doing is it's loading in an R model with some tasks, and what I can do is advance it. What's interesting about this, too, is this is a Vensim model that's this, oh, sorry, thank you. All right, so this is a Vensim model that's running over here. And over here on the left, we're seeing results that are appearing from an R model. So we're kind of combining an R model and a Vensim model together to get this all to work. And I can advance through this. And this was built using Epicenter. You can see here in the model folder, there's an R model and a Vensim model that are kind of sitting together. And then what we did is we used this UI Builder to create this. And here you can see the UI Builder with these components that you can kind of drag around for creating, a rudimentary but usable interface here. And I can click in and look at properties. I can see the title of this particular graph and the y-axis variable and the x-axis variable and so forth. I can, also define variables to do as inputs and things like that. So that's what a lone modeler will do with this tool. But often for doing high production value simulations and models and sort of applications, you need a team of people. So a team might be a UI designer who's designing the look of the application. You have scientific programmers or data scientists or modelers who are also on the project who are building the model. You might have a web developer who knows HTML and JavaScript and other things. You might have somebody who's doing QA, a project manager who's maybe interacting with folks. And this group of people uses a different set of tools to collaborate together. So a data scientist might be using tools that data scientists are familiar with, like Excel or Python or R or system dynamics models and things. Web developers, though, use a completely different set of tools. And web designers use things. QA has different things. And these people need to work together to create something great. And ideally, in order to do that, you want each of these people to be able to work in the tools that they're familiar with. So that's what one of the things that Epicenter can do as well. We can produce simpler things that are kind of the lone data scientists producing something that's nice, but to do something that's more elaborate, you really need a team of people to put it together here. I'm going to jump into showing some more of the details with these Epicenter user interface technologies. But before I do that, I want to just do a quick poll. And what I want to do is ask you all online what of the following web technologies are you familiar with. If you go to the GoToMeeting control panel, you'll see a poll on the side, and it's just been launched now. And you can kind of go in and answer for yourself here which of the following web technologies you're familiar with, and we'll get a sense for what people have done. You can see people filling it out here. And what we're seeing is, as it evolves, is that most people a vast majority of people are familiar with HTML, and we've got roughly 50% of people that are familiar with CSS and JavaScript. So it's something like that we're coming up with. And I think that's pretty good, actually, for what we're doing today. Okay, thanks for doing that. So what we have with Epicenter is a stack of user interface technologies for creating interfaces. And we just showed this drag and drop user interface designer. And I did that very quickly, and I did that on purpose today because I really want to dive into some of these lower level libraries. Actually, just one of the lower level ones, which is Flow.js today. But in addition to Flow.js, there are other libraries, which is Epicenter.js, and then there's these APIs that can be used together as well. And the basic idea is that as you move up this stack, it becomes easier to build things. It's sort of, the highest level, of course, is the drag and drop tools at the top. And as you go down the stack, you have more flexibility, and you can do sort of more elaborate things. So, if we go just one level down, what you'll see is we have a lot more flexibility in terms of the design and stuff. So today what we're going to do is just focus on the top two layers. We've already seen the user interface designer. And what I want to show you next is Flow.js, which is another library. And to do that, I thought I would start with a model. And what I've done for fun is to produce the same model in 4 different languages. So, and the model today that we're going to cover is Apple Watch sales, so the growth of Apple Watch sales. And I built a model in R and Python and Julia and Vensim. And what I'll do is, in a minute, I'll kind of show you how that model works. But basically, it's a diffusion model that's built in each one of these tools. So let me start off by just showing you what the model looks like in each of these things. So here's the R model. And, oh, I'm sorry, the poll's still open. That's what's blocking it. Thank you. So I need to close the poll to get that moving. All right, thank you, Amber. So here's the R model. And what you can see is it looks like a normal R model for those of you who are familiar with R. It has a function here called forecast sales. The only thing that's different about it, and really not that different, is it uses a package called Epicenter. If you're familiar with R, one of the strengths of R is that it has a huge number of packages that can do all kinds of things. In this case, we have this package called Epicenter, and that's all that's in here that's kind of unique to build this one. In Python, it's very similar. We have a model that looks pretty similar to the R model. And at the top of it, we're saying import from Epicenter, another package. Julia, kind of similar thing again. You can see here it's using Epicenter, and it's kind of wrapped in a module essentially. So those are the models here. Let me just actually pull up the Vensim model as well to show that. So here's the Vensim model that it does the same thing again. It's another view of this. So this is a commercial package for developing essentially the same model today. And what I'm going to do for the webinar today is kind of focus on using Python through most of it. But for now, let me actually just jump to showing you the sort of the challenge with this. I don't know how many people here are familiar with R, but this is a very nice tool that's built for using R called R Studio. And I'm going to go ahead and run this here. Here you can see the model that is loaded. You can see market size here is set. This is the initial market size at, what is that, 2.5 million. Purchase probability is 5%. And then we've got, you can see here this function that iterates through creating values for it. And so, I've saved this now, and I can look at things like, well, what is my market size? If I type in the variable market size here on the console, let me get that a little bit bigger to make it easy for everybody to see. I can see that that is 250,000. And if I run, what is the function here, forecast sales, like this, then now I have all the forecast sales values kind of filled in for me. So if I type in total sales here, I can see an array that has all the total sales, or a vector of total sales here over months. And if I type in something like total sales 10, I think this will work here. Yeah, then I can see the value for month 10 for total sales. So that's how R works. And what we want to do with this then is connect a model up so we can interact with this without using this interface for building this out. And the way we're going to do that is by going into Epicenter. I guess I'm going to stick with Chrome right now, since I had some issues a moment ago. And I'm going to, well, I'll go back to Epicenter. What I'm going to do is start from the beginning here and kind of show you how all this works. So here's my account in Epicenter. Actually, let me go to the top and show you sort of a mixture of things. I have personal projects, and there are team projects in here. And team projects are the places where these teams of people kind of collaborate to build tools together. So, just to give you a little an example of that, here's some of this MSH work that went on. And if I look at members of this particular team, you can see there's a variety of people that are in here. So we've got, myself happen to be in this team, but there's other people from the organization and other people from Vietnam that are collaborating together to build a tool together. So that's kind of how that's working. I can also, though, have personal projects. You can see I have 26 personal projects that I've been working on, and those are just for me. Those are ones that only I can access. And there's various rules that we have in terms of access. You can see here you can have public tools that are available that are unlocked. You can have ones that are only available to the author, to the builder of the tool. And then you can have another category which is authenticated, which means that users need to log in. So those are kind of the three different possibilities. For authenticated users, where users need to log in, those are only associated with team accounts. I wanted to show you a little bit today because I hope that after this webinar day you're going to go in and try to create your own projects. So the way I'm going to approach this is actually by creating a project from scratch. When you click on Create a New Project, you can use an example that already exists here, use an example project to kind of build it. But today what we're going to do is make our own project. And I'm going to call this April Webinar. And I'm going to give it a name down here. And you see what it does is it kind of builds a URL for the final tool that we're going to be creating. I'm going to just call it April Webinar like this without a space in it. And then I can set access for my private account. I can only set it to either public or private. And I'm going to make it public today, so it's going to be accessible after everything's built. So I'm going to create this project. And now you can see this file's created, but everything's kind of empty here. So here's where my models should sit, and I don't have any models in here right now, and this is where my user interface files can sit, and there's nothing in there right now either. So the first step is to get some files in here, and we'll provide these files after the webinar is over. Where's my file thing? I don't see it now. Okay, there we go. So here's what I want to do here in my model is put the model files in. And there's multiple ways I can do this, by the way. I can upload them. I can actually add directly and edit files here if I want to. I can also upload and unzip if I have a zip file. But another easy way to do them is just to drag and drop them across. So that's what I prefer to do. So let me go here. I'm going to go to my model file, and here I have the various models that I created that are identical or nearly identical across these. And if I drag that in here, what you can see is it's uploading them and then making them available in my model directory. And then similarly with static, what I want to do is add in the HTML files that I'm creating to build this up. And I've created a directory for that. And again, this would be something that would provide to you. This directory is called static, and if I select all of these and then drag them across into the static folder here, you can see they're all uploaded. And these are the files that we'll be using today. All right, so that's what we need for getting started. And what I want to do is start off by looking at an example and then start, kind of building something out here. So I'm going to take this URL and copy the link address, and I'm just going to put it here. And you can see here, well, first off, I think it's sort of interesting to see how this is built. So the URL for these is forio.com/app, and then after that, you put the name of the organization, the team, or the private account that you're using. My account is mbean, so that is my name, and all my projects sit below my private account name. And so the project I just created was April webinar, I think. And then I can stop there if I have an index.html file, and that will give me details of it. But what I want to do for right now is to use a file called start.html and to kind of show you a starting point for actually building this out. Okay, so here's my start file. And what you can see is it's pretty empty, right? So nothing is kind of filled in. But we do have a button here. We have a reset, and we have some things that we can do with this. And what I want to illustrate to you is how do you go about actually connecting this thing up. So let's go back to Epicenter. And in this case, what I'm going to do is go to the static file and go to start.html and start editing this. And in here, we have a few files that are available. We have, we're using something called jQuery, which is a popular library in Lodash for making it easier to write JavaScript. And then we are using Epicenter and then Flow.js. So, and this is the stack. So Epicenter, or Flow.js relies on Epicenter. Epicenter needs jQuery and Lodash to work. So all four of these are used together to create this. And what you can see here is we're doing some basic HTML. Let me make this a little bit bigger, make it slightly easier to see. And there's things like a button that's called forecast that appears here, and another button called reset. We have an input that we can see, right? So if you look back on this, there's this input field that appears here, but there's nothing in it. So what we want to do here is fill that in and turn that input into something that is actually connected back up to the model. And actually, I should show you before that on the bottom here, we have this connection that's going on to our model. And in this case, what it's doing is it's saying we're going to initialize a channel. And that channel means that you can have more than one channel available at a time. So you could have a Vensim model and a Python model, or an R model and a Julia model working together in the same interface, or multiple Vensim models or multiple Python models, and you can direct them based on this channel that you're setting up. And in this case, I'm pulling model.python, which is the Python model that I have. And what I want to do then is link bind some variables from my Python model to the interface. So if in my input here, which created that input field, if I type data-f-bind equal purchase probability, I have to spell it right. Then that input now will be connected to purchase probability. So let's go ahead and save that and try that out. So now if I go over here and I refresh, what I can see is that the value 5% is appearing. And if I go back to my Python model, which is here, you can see here's purchase probability equal 5. So that's how it's getting that value out of it. And I want to do other things too. Like I want to, like I showed with the R model earlier, I want to click on the function called forecast sales, and then find a value, for example, for total sales over time. And the way that I do that is by creating a link to a variable in here to build that out. So let me do that. And what I'm going to do is say purchase probability down here. Well, actually, let me just do it with sales in month 10. So I'm going to do sales in month 10 is going to be equal to span, and then data-f-bind equal the total sales. In this case, I'm just going to refer to a time period, which is month 10. And the other thing I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to format it. So I'm going to pipe, that's called a pipe, and I'm going to do pound 0 to do it a comma delimited version of this, and then close that off, and that is my my span for this. So so that's complete. So let me go ahead and save that. And now if I look at it here and refresh, I see it's 0 initially, but if I hit the forecast button, oh, you know what I forgot to do actually, is to put in the forecast. I need to put in some, I make the button do something as well. The button is not linked to anything right now, so I need to also say data-f-on click do something, right? And what I want to do here is have it call the function, which is called forecast sales. So I put that in there to make forecast work, and if I save that now, I'm making that button do something, and if I go back here and refresh, I can see the 0, and if I hit forecast, it should work, and I must have messed something up. Let me just check it. Did I use the right variable name? Let's see. Well, it's not occurring to me here. Let me show you the sort of the next version that we have here. I'll come back to this at the end. I don't want to, I know we're, so what I have is a sort of a final version of this, and let me show that to you. Or not final, pardon me. The complete version of this basic version here, which includes the this data-f-on-click forecast sales, and I can take a look at that here. So let me go to that here with basic and take a look. Okay, so here it is, and if I hit forecast, I can see the result. Oh, you know what? I think that actually, I think it just timed out on that one. Let me try that again. Yeah, so actually now it's working. Let me try that again with the start version and show that to you here. So I'm going to just create a completely fresh session. And it's loading. It's now loaded with the 0. I hit forecast, and there's the result. So it is working. It's just sometimes what happens is when you're kind of going back and forth and editing things on the fly, the sessions can get confused. So there we are. Okay, very good. So next what I want to do is show something a little bit more elaborate, right? So the next step in this in creating a high production value interface would be to connect into graphics, to be able to, you know, for example, create a chart or a graph or something like that, right? That's a very common thing that's done with these kinds of analytic tools. And what's nice is there's all these things available on the web to make it relatively easy to do this. So there's this technology called Bootstrap that provides some libraries for making it easy to build these things out. There's also something called D3, which is a really nice library for creating web interfaces, or excuse me, creating charts and graphs. The problem with D3, though, is that it is kind of hard to use. It's a very nice library, and it gives you a lot of control. But you know, to create something like a stacked bar graph, you kind of have to write a lot of code, and you have to know a lot about D3 in order to make it work right. So what we've done, what Forio has done, is created a layer on top of D3 called Contour. And Contour makes it a lot easier to interact with D3 graphs. So here we've got some basic graph types like this line chart, which is one of the things I want to use today. And what you can see here in Forio Contour is that you can write some basic code to say, here's some data and then I'm going to create something here, and I just set it up, say it's a Cartesian graph with a line using data for the input, and then render it. And that's much easier. It's much easier to kind of set that up, right? So what we have here in Epicenter is a contour example that's not connected to any models right now, any of our models. And what you can see with it is it's got a div class that says my first chart. It's set up to be 600 wide by 400 tall, and that's it. This is where the chart is going to get inserted. And then I have this script that says create a new contour chart, use my first chart here to fill in this stuff, and we're going to give it a y-axis name and an x-axis name, and then provide the line detail data here and then render it. So that's how that works. And if I look at that here, I can show you what that looks like. And there's the chart output for it. You can see new sales on the side and month on the top. And so this is how you can use Contour for creating this. But of course, what we really want to do is be able to connect this up with our Python model, right? So there's a few more steps involved in doing that. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And the way we're going to do that, let me just go to here to kind of show that. This is a text editor. And what I'm going to do is show a basic chart. So what we have here is a basic chart. And, well, actually, let's start with basic chart start, sorry. And what you can see with basic chart start is we've got a div tag for sales chart in here that's kind of like that. This is where we want to insert our chart eventually. So let's take a look at what that looks like on the screen here. I'm going to go to basic chart start to illustrate that. And so here it is, and I've got an input over here. And what's interesting is I've got this thing kind of tied to it. So if I type in 0.1, you can see this is updating to 10% and things. I'm going to show something with that in a minute. And I have room here for a chart, but I don't actually have it connected to anything. And I can run this forecast and things like I did before. You can see it's formatted a little bit more nicely too, and that's using a library to do that as well. So now let me go in here and fix that up a little bit. And one of the things that I want to do is to turn this constrain users for this particular case, and it's a popular tool that people like to use in these things, so I wanted to illustrate that today. So the way I'm going to create a slider is by changing my input here. So we see, where is it? Here it is. Here's my input, which is just the input like the other one I created earlier, binding to purchase probability, like I showed before. And I'm just going to add a few things to it. I say type equal range, which means slider in this case. And then I'm going to say the min value for my slider is going to be 0, and the max value for my slider is going to be 0.07. And I'm going to set a step in this case for when I drag the slider, what values can go to is going to be incremented by 0.005, so half of a percent each time. So that's going to create my connection to my slider. And if I do that and save it, and then go back to Epicenter, and in this case what I'll do is I'll upload that file. And it's called Basic Chart Start. I'm going to replace it and go back and look at this now and load it. And now I can see it set up as a slider, which is I drag it around, changes the slider value, which is a little bit of nicer control here. But what I really wanted to do here was to create a graph, right? So that was sort of my goal with this. And the way I'm going to do that for today is just add in some logic to make that happen in here. And here in basic start.html, I've got a section where I can post in some information about the chart. I'm going to put that in. And what I've done here is, like before, I've created this sales chart, and I'm connecting it to the ID tag for sales chart and identifying the X and Y axis labels for it. And so what this is going to do is replace this sales chart up here with with an actual chart. And what I need to do is have it subscribe to a data feed from my Python model. And the way I'm going to do that is just flow channel subscribe and do total sales here. And then what I do is say sales chart render against data.total sales to create it. And so that's it. With this bit here, I can create a complete chart in using Epicenter. So I'm going to go ahead and save this basic chart start and then go back to Epicenter and upload it again. And replace it. And start this, and we can see the results from that now with the new chart. So total watch sales on the side and month over here. And now this is functioning where I can drag this and it can create different behavior and things like that over time. So, so that's how that works. For the last step for today is I want to just show some examples of something that's complete against this. So what we have here is final. This is the final version, and basically it's just using additional chart types for this. So let me show that to you as a starting point. I'm going to do final start here. So here we have final start that's kind of laid out with all the details in it. And what you can see is various values over time with this, and I can drag this around and do forecasts and see the model changing over time. I might want to do some nicer things and maybe change this, for example, from a line chart to an area chart. And within Contour, there's a variety of charting libraries that are available, or different chart types that are available. So, you know, as I was showing a moment ago in the gallery here, there's a whole bunch of different chart libraries that you can use for this. So let me change those into area charts. And the way I'm going to do that is by edit final start and edit this in place here. And instead of, let's see here, the installed base chart from line, I'm going to change that to area. And then for the potential customers, I want to change that to area as well and save it. And now if I refresh here, we can see the area chart appearing as well. So this is our more polished interface where I can begin to experiment with, you know, what I think might happen with sales for Apple Watches over time based on how big I think the market is. You know, if I think it's 100 million instead, and what happens with purchase probability and things, and sort of how this market is possibly going to grow over time to kind of create these interactions. All right. The last thing I wanted to just talk about is a little bit of a, oh, it's interesting. I'm having some trouble with the screen, huh? Let me try something here. Oh, it's still cut off, huh? That's interesting. It seems like something GoToMeeting related. I wonder if there's something I can do to fix that. I'm going to try stopping and then restarting the show. Let's see if that fixes it. Yeah, that fixed it. Good. All right. Go back to my slides. All right. So this is a little bit about how Epicenter works in terms of its service-oriented architecture. There's an analytics app server that connects to a variety of different calculation engines. And by calculation engines here, what we mean is commercial tools for doing, and also non-commercial tools for doing with different languages like Python, for example, or R, or Vim, or Julia, or others. And those interact with models that we're creating, and that those models produce data, and that the data can be saved in a database and recalled later per user or per group. And there's also an authentication layer where you're able to type in passwords, for example. They have unique passwords per user, but also to connect to external authentication services. For example, if you're working with an organization that we're going to have single sign-on for being able to access these things. As we saw in some of the examples earlier, you can also connect to third-party services. So, for example, you can connect to Maps data. You can connect. We've used it before, for example, to pull current risk-free rates like LIBOR rates and Treasury rates and things like that from the St. Louis Federal Reserve API to kind of keep a particular interface current or a particular model current. And you can also publish things back to there if you want to push data from your model back to those things. And then there's a number of users who can interact either through a browser or mobile or other devices to interact with with applications that are working on the app server. And what's nice about this is that there's a single model that many people can interact with on that server. So if any of you go to, what did I have, foio.com/app/mbean April webinar, you'll be able to try out some of the examples that I created today directly because they're online and published, and anyone can access them. So just to summarize, Foio Epicenter is this computational platform for hosting various kinds of server-side models, creating interactive interfaces, and sharing insights on web and mobile. And it can work with a variety of tools. And it's actually relatively easy even to switch back and forth and things between different models on here by just changing that model setting. As we talked about, there's a variety of languages that Epicenter supports. And if you have any questions, this is how to contact me. So we have about 10 minutes left in the webinar right now. And the way that we want to proceed with that is just by asking some questions or getting any questions answered. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them to me. And what will happen is Amber is going to go ahead and field them for me, and then I'll be able to answer them. So Amber, are there any questions?
Well, there is a question about pricing, and someone would like to know where the pricing begins and how they can get set up with the team.
Okay, so let me see. So for the pricing stuff, well, first off, let me make it clear what's free and what we charge for with Epicenter. So when we were in the platform earlier, you can see is that there's, as I was mentioning earlier, there's personal projects and then team-based projects. And the way that Epicenter works is all the things that you do in your personal projects are free. But the limitation, again, is that personal projects can't have authentication in them. So there either be things that only you can use as the author or that are fully public in terms of the interface. So the models themselves are always private, but the interface layer, in terms of logging on to get access to it, you need a team account for doing that. So let me go to our website and show you a little bit about where the pricing appears and how that works. And also, so here is pricing for Epicenter. And as we were saying, the personal stuff is free. There's small team accounts, which means that you can create an authenticated project where users must log in, and that's available at $47 a month or $477 per year, on up to a large team where you can create 25 authenticated projects for just under $10,000 per year. And there's sort of an explanation down here too in terms of the number of end users and features and things like that. But that's sort of the range that we're talking about. And what you pay for in the platform are these team-based accounts that I was describing earlier. It might be useful to just see a little bit more about the way that these things get set up and how you can control them within Epicenter. So within here too, we have these settings where we can flip back and forth between making this work publicly or privately, and renaming projects and even deleting them if you want to. But another kind of interesting feature that we didn't explore today, but we'll I'm sure explore in a future webinar, is this ability to use API keys to provide a web interface that is separated from Epicenter. So we have some customers who host the user interface layer, all these things that appear here, on their own website. And that those files then communicate with Epicenter to run models. But from the user's perspective, they don't see any of the foio.com URL in it. So that's another thing that's kind of interesting about Epicenter, is that you can host these models yourself, and using this technique that I was showing you a moment ago with Flow.js, where you can specify what API you're using and what directory you're using, and then have the HTML files just communicate with Epicenter and have it work over the web, where Foio isn't hosting both the HTML files and the model. We'd only in that case be hosting the model. All right, that was a little bit of a digression, but Amber, are there other questions? Pardon? Let me just check. I see something here with questions. Well, yeah, there's several things. Oh, you're not seeing any of these. That's a bummer. Okay. Let me see here what we got. Yeah, we have several things here. Okay, there's some things that are. Oh, somebody is making some suggestions. I'm just going through this myself right now to see what the poll things are. Most of these things were around solving issues. There's the pricing question. Let's see. Yeah, so someone's asking, could I provide some code snippets which makes it easier to hook up the model to the user interface? And I'd be happy to do that. What I'll do after the webinar's over is send out the code examples that we have here, and they'll be saved as a zip file. Let me actually just show that to you since we're online right now so you can see how that works. And we'll make that available to everybody who's attended today. But what I'll actually send you is, let's see here. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Is this file here. It's tutorials file.zip. And let me just create a new folder here so I can make it easier to illustrate how that works. So when you get that, if you unzip it, I'm going to unzip it by clicking on it here. What it will do is produce tutorial files, and then within there, there'll be a folder called model and a folder called static. And what you need to do with that is probably obvious, is take all the model files that are in the model folder and put that into the Epicenter model folder here, right? So in this folder here, and then put all the static files that are in that static folder in the static folder on Epicenter, and then you'll be able to run this out. And to get started with it, what you can do is if you go back to the top of the project level, you can click the URL to get that to work. All right, so let's see, what other questions do we have? Code snippets. So a service plan that allows a custom domain, just to answer that question, any service level will support a custom domain because if you're hosting your own files on that. We can also help by supporting custom domains, but if you want to use your own domain name that you already have with your own servers, any of these levels, even the free individual level, will support that so long as you're comfortable with having your files be public. So for doing classroom-based multi-user simulations, someone's asking about creating multi-user sims, and that would, again, be a good topic for another webinar. Any of the team-based accounts will support multi-user sessions. So the reason that you need a team-based account for creating a multi-user session is you need to be able to log in to create multiple users. So because you need this login or authentication to do that, and that only is available at the team level, that's what you need. So if you want to create a multiplayer game using one of these tools, you need to use the one of the team-based accounts. Okay, we just have, I know, a couple more minutes left here. Does the UI automatically come with responsive design, or do I need to connect via Bootstrap to allow for a specific responsive design? And the answer is that, so first off, let me explain to people who might not know what responsive design is. So let's take a look at this example that I created earlier. And this is kind of a responsive design. I remember when I was working on this a while ago, I tried to build it like that. And what happens is, as you shrink the page, as you can see here, you can see things kind of move around, right? So now, instead of being ordered where things are kind of next to each other, what happens is things kind of restack themselves in a way that makes it possible to look on a smaller viewer. And the concept of responsive design is basically that you can have web pages that look good on a phone, in a browser on a phone, or on a tablet, or on a big screen. And so that's the basic idea behind it. And you can see this kind of follows that paradigm reasonably well here. If you use the UI builder, it has responsive design elements built into it, so it'll automatically support it. But when you're doing things from scratch, as we were doing today, we're just writing HTML, it doesn't automatically come with responsive design, but it's relatively easy to add it like we've done here. So the way that we achieve that here today in this design is, let's go to the final. We did what actually that person sort of referenced here, is we used this library called Bootstrap. So we just included this line in here, which is Bootstrap. And then what we can do is use Bootstrap-style code to create responsive design here, and that's like creating different divs to kind of break things up in correct ways and things like that. So that's how we accomplished that today. A good way to learn more about using Bootstrap for responsive design, if anyone's interested, is to go to the Bootstrap site here, and they kind of explain more about how to do it. And it's relatively simple. You know, I'm somebody who's a modeler. I'm not a UI designer. I don't have a background in that. But you know, I can do this kind of stuff to create a fairly responsive design for this. And like I said, if you just use the UI builder, you can get that for free without effort, I guess I should say. All right, so continuing on. Let's see, we only have one. I'll do one more question, and the other questions we'll answer online. The question is, does all project creation need to be done in the browser? That'll be my last question for today. And the answer to that is no. Right now what I've been doing is dragging and dropping through the browser, but you can actually connect up your interface to specific folders on your desktop and drag and drop folders out of it, and then that's another way to update projects. And the way you do that is if you look under Settings in your model folder, there's a section here where you can, let's see, where is that? Pardon me, here it is, File Transfer. It's not on, it's under Project. File Transfer on the right. What you can do is you can set up an SFTP session to connect to a specific folder using this port and this information, and then you can be dragging files in and out of that to accomplish that. So thank you very much for your time today. We'll follow up with you where we'll send you the files that we've used for the webinar today, and we'll also follow up with those people who have questions that weren't answered today as well. Bye-bye.